can get her sound to work. But thank you all for joining us today. I am Andrea Baer, the Executive Director here at Mended Hearts, and we are in our clinical trial series, education series called Leading the Way. We're very excited today to have a panel of great patients and who are going to share their experience with a clinical trial. So that is super exciting. While we're working to get Joy up and online, I just want to share a little bit of information about Mended Hearts. If you're new to us, our mission is to inspire hope and improve the quality of life and their families through ongoing peer-to-peer support, education, and advocacy. You can find us all over social media and on the web at mendedhearts.org, mendedlittlehearts.org, or at myheartvisit.org. You can also call us on our toll-free Heartline. Just as a couple of notes, all attendees are in listen-only mode. If you cannot hear, check the audio button on your personal computer to make sure your sound is on. That's typically the issue that we have. If you would love or like to ask a question, we would love for you to do that. You can press your question into the Q&A box at any time during the presentation, and the moderator will read your questions during the question and answer phase. Just note that the presenter here, Dr. Keegan, will not be able to answer specific questions about your loved one as they are not the treating physician. And then finally, a recording of this presentation, not really the slides because we don't have a lot of slides, will be available on the Mended Hearts website following the event. So as I had said, my name is Andrea Baer and I'm the Executive Director, and I will be working on the chat and answering questions, but I would love to introduce to you today our moderator, who is Dr. Patricia Keegan. She's the Director of Strategic and Programmatic Initiatives at Emory Heart and Vascular. She's a lead nurse practitioner, Structural Heart and Valve Center. She is going to do the moderating and the hard work today, talking to our patients. And I am very excited to welcome our three patients. And unfortunately, I don't have Deb's picture, but she is here with us. We have Dorothy Cantor. She is an angioplasty patient, a former president of the American Psychological Association, and a clinical trial participant. We also have Joy Smith. She is from Chicago. She is a TAVR clinical trial participant, and hopefully we're going to be able to hear her when she talks. And then we also have Deb Jolie Warcholik, and I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong, Deb. She is from Connecticut. She has had 4 heart surgeries, 1 as a child and 3 as an adult. So with that, I am going to stop sharing my screen so that we can see everybody who is here with us today. Deb, you should have the ability to show your screen now. I gave you permission, and I hope that we can hear and see everybody during this talk. But first, I would like to introduce Dr. Keegan, and you can take it away.
Thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of this today. And I'm so incredibly gracious to Mended Hearts, to you, Miss Baer, to Jody Smith, and to Leslie Brown for inviting me to be a part of this. You know, obviously the reason we do this is to be able to help patients and really generate evidence to really advance the fields. And so with that, you know, just really hoping that our patients today are able to share their stories and what research and being a part of a clinical trial, what that experience was for them. So with that, I'll go ahead and start with Dr. Cantor.
Thank you. You will be very interested in something I'm going to talk about that you don't know. I have a lot to stay alive for. And in my family, that's not easy because everybody on both sides of the family died of cardiovascular disease, many of them very young. My father had his first heart attack at 42. So when I had funny feelings in my chest when I was 47, I went right to a doctor and said, I think I got the family curse. And it was determined that I had a 90% blockage in the left anterior descending, the artery that's known as the widowmaker. And I was scheduled for bypass surgery because that was the standard of care when this happened. But my cardiologist knew about a clinical trial at Emory Hospital done by Dr. Andreas Grunzig, who was the person who invented angioplasty. And I prayed that I would be accepted by him rather than having to go through bypass surgery. My doctor wanted it because I was so young, and bypass, they assumed, would only last 20 years. They didn't know how long angioplasty would last. And I prayed because I didn't want my chest cracked open. So I did get accepted. I went, and I really dodged a bullet on 2 counts. One, I didn't get my chest cracked open. But secondly, I was scheduled to have bypass surgery at Newark Beth Israel Hospital in March of 1984. Newark had the highest AIDS rate in the country, and they didn't start testing the blood supply for AIDS until the following month. I was followed for years by my cardiologist as part of the study. I didn't have a stent at that time because they weren't invented yet, but the angioplasty lasted 33 years. Wow. And then in August of 2017, I had a major heart attack, which stupidly, I didn't recognize I didn't recognize as a heart attack because I had had a nuclear stress test 2 weeks before. That I had 2 stents, and I had 2 stents at that time, and I was left with mild to moderate congestive heart failure and a very leaky mitral valve. I was told about the Edwards mitral valve clip, but also told that I wasn't strong enough to be a candidate for it yet. And I truly believe that the people who are doing clinical trials want to do them on people who will survive. They want to do that because they want to prove not only that their device is efficacious, but that it's safe. So it took me 2 years before I was ready to get the tested to go before the clinical review committee. Why did I want to do it? I didn't like how I was functioning. It held the promise of great improvement. It was, again, non-surgical. It was going in through the groin. I'm in New York, and if you can hear fire engines, I'm sorry. And I had had a great track record with clinical trials. The experience of doing it was very simple. I went through the pre-testing, the 6-minute walk, a very cursory neurological screening, touch your nose, follow a pencil, a cognitive screening, describe what's in a picture, and I had an echocardiogram. That's when I met Kathy Benzile, who many of you may have met 2 weeks ago when she presented on clinical trials. She was the nurse in charge of the program. The procedure was like every other that I had had, going in through the groin. I got version 2 of the clip, which made me feel even safer because I knew version 1 had worked. When I came out of the procedure, the doctor met my son, said, your mom did fine. And my son said, I'm taking her home with me. My bedroom is on the 1st floor and the guest room is on the 2nd floor. So should I change rooms with her? And Dr. Kipperman said, then why did we do the procedure? Before I had the procedure, I couldn't walk more than a block or 2. And I had a lot of difficulty managing stairs. How am I now? I walked up the stairs at my son's house the day I was released. I will confess I did not carry my suitcase, but I don't carry my suitcase anyway. The other day I walked up a flight of 22 stairs, and I used to be, I live in the city, and I would get to a corner and there'd be a red light, and I was so grateful because it meant I could catch my breath. Now I've become the real New Yorker I am, and when I get to a corner and there's a red light, it's like, I have to wait, and I just keep going. One of the questions that they asked on a questionnaire that's done every year that includes, can you do various activities of daily living? Can you take a shower? Can you dress yourself? Can you brush your teeth? Whatever it is, how far can you walk? Then there's a question that says, can you run for a bus? And I had said yes to every other question, except can you run for a bus? And I wrote no, but I put an asterisk next to it. And I said, it's not because of my heart, it's my 84-year-old legs. Do I have any regrets about being part of the clinical trial? Not one. I have had such an improvement in my quality of life. I only go for follow-up now annually. I had to go semi-annually to begin with, but Kathy told me last time I was there that now I only had to come annually for the next 4 years. So I take it as a guarantee that I'm going to live at least another 4 years because Edwards wants me to survive. I'm a happy camper. Thank you, Dr. Keegan.
Oh, that is such a great story. Thank you so much for sharing. Ms. Smith, hopefully you can hear us, because I would love to see I would love to hear about your story and being part of a TAVR trial.
Yeah, thank God. Now I've got it all together. I tell you, this modern technology is something else, but I'm determined not to let it beat me. What would you like to know?
I would just like to hear about, I understand that you were told you had aortic stenosis maybe just over 10 years ago, and something to keep an eye on, but not something that needed to be addressed right away. And then it sounds like around 2018, you started to have some
actually, yeah, in 2010, my company moved me to Chicago, and I immediately, when you move to a new city, state, you get your doctors together, blah, blah, blah. So I went to Northwestern because when I lived in Chicago before, that's where my doctors were. And my heart doctor, Dr. Dasgupta, wonderful man, took good care of me. And that was 2010. Now here we go, about 2012, I believe. Yeah, it was about 2012 when he said, we're having a little problem with your aortic valve, but we're going to keep a watch on it. So about 2018, he said he would always use a water fountain, a faucet, and turn the faucet on to show me how the blood was going through the artery. And now it's getting a little smaller. And he used that, which I thought was a great way for me to understand. So now in 2018, I was diagnosed with severe aortic stenosis. But I had, all through this, I had absolutely no symptoms. I wasn't short of breath. I could climb the steps. I could walk. Now running, I'm with Dorothy. Not running because I also have a bad back, and that stops me from doing the running. But I had absolutely no problem. I had no fainting, no nothing. But I'm also a very dedicated employee, so to speak. I love what I was doing, and my job was important. And I could have had some symptoms and didn't pay any attention to it. But I don't remember having anything that would stop me from doing what I wanted to do. Now in 2018, I retired. And I'm doing volunteer work. In this particular one, I'm doing Meals on Wheels, and I am walking to one of my little people's home, and I had a sharp pain come down right the middle of my chest. It felt like warm. It was a warm, sharp pain. I got in my car, took a couple of breaths. So that's okay. Didn't do anything about it. About 2.5 weeks later, I'm walking to my barber to get my hair cut, and that pain comes again. Well, then I said, okay, Joy, don't be stupid. So I go back to Dr. Gupta. We do the regular echo, and I had just seen him in April, and we were watching my valve. And this is October, just 6 months later, because I saw him every 6 months. And I'd be darned if the valve hadn't closed up even more within a 6-month period. So that was my first symptom, and I wasn't going to have anymore. All right. So then he says, Joy, we have a choice. It's time for us to do something. I said, that's correct. And of course, open heart surgery was what I thought it was going to do. He says, I'd like for you to participate in a trial study that we're doing here, and set me up to the Cardiology Institute to see a Dr. Ricciotti. And he said to me, we are trying to, our trial is to get FDA to allow this procedure to be given to anyone. Particularly at that point, it was only given to people who were very, very serious and could not have the open heart surgery. And it was older than I was. I think I was 76 at the time, 77. So then I said, fine, if it's going to help other people. I had absolutely no fear. I was very fascinated by this procedure that I had never heard of. So he said, first we had to have FDA to approve. Now this was in 2018, November, December 2018. I'm thinking we were going to have like a whole lot of time before the surgery is to be done. And in February, FDA approved for me to have the procedure. In February 13th, I went in on Wednesday. Of course, before that, I had all the standard tests to see that I was okay. I had no blockage anywhere, so that was a good thing. I was in decently all right, good health. We scheduled the test for the 13th of February. I went in on, that was a Wednesday, never will forget it, on Wednesday afternoon. And I went into, everything was explained to me. And I thought I was going to be in the hospital like 4 or 5 days. I had the surgery on Wednesday. On Wednesday, I was in intensive care. On Thursday, I was moved to the regular room. And on Friday, I went home. I had absolutely no problems. Of course, I went through cardiac rehab, which was wonderful, and I kept that up until the COVID hit. I had that. I had the normal things I had to do with, not taking a bath, paying attention if I got dizzy or anything. So I would be careful about how I got up and stuff. I had no problem walking around. In fact, I was amazed on Thursday after the surgery. I walked down the hospital hall and I walked up a flight of steps at the hospital. I just couldn't believe it that I had to ask the doctor, did you guys really perform a procedure? Because I don't feel anything. Of course, in my groin, it was a little sore, but I'm telling you, the other lady's name is Joy too. I was absolutely fascinated that I felt well. And of course, I went back. First, I went back in a month. Then I went back in 6 months. And then, of course, I went the following year and I had nothing. I was driving my car. I'm a very independent woman, and driving my car is important to me. And when the day comes when I can't, then I'll deal with it. But right now, I like driving my car, going where I want to go, when I want to go. And that was important. I had no problem whatsoever. No problem sleeping, nothing. That's why I kept saying, I don't think they gave me the TAVR. I said, I think they, nothing happened. I think they put an incision in me, but they wouldn't put anything in. And then I got the wonderful TAVR artery from Edwards. And that just blew my mind. My mother died April 2011. And she had the same condition, but she was older and she was not eligible for open heart surgery. It was just nothing else she could do. She just quietly went to sleep. That was in 2011. The TAVR did not come to the country, if I'm remembering correctly, until August of 2011. So I always feel my mom went to heaven and went to working on the procedures so that she knew her daughter was going to need this procedure and made sure it came through. And she's still watching over me. It's just the most fascinating. It's a miracle as far as I'm concerned. And I just don't understand why more people don't know about it, and more people who should and could take advantage of it, because after my surgery, which was in February, in August of 2019, the test was approved, and now anybody can have the surgery. So again, I'm just honored that I participated in that trial.
That's an amazing story, Miss Joy. Thank you so much for sharing. You know, one of the great things that I've been able to do is being able to work with TAVR patients like yourself, and you know, hearing the stories and the improvement that patients can get. You know, it's your story is not isolated. You know, patients are up within a couple of hours, and having a background in surgical nursing, I mean, certainly the difference is night and day. So I appreciate you sharing your story. Mm-hmm. And now we have with us Deb Warcholik. Hopefully I'm pronouncing your name correctly. But I'm looking forward to hearing your story as well, because one of the other great things that I get to do is participate with congenital heart patients as well.
So I was born in 1972 with a bicuspid or aortic valve. It progressed pretty quickly. So by the time I was 4 years old, right after my 4th birthday, I went in to have open heart surgery to have the valve widened.
Oh my God.
I was very, very fortunate, because that lasted me until I was 36 years old. And I was able to have 2 healthy children naturally, you know, before a replacement. So that was, I'm very thankful for that. So when I was 35, my doctor said, you know, it's narrowing up a little bit, calcifying. I think I need to send you to an adult specialist, because I was still with my pediatric cardiologist. I loved him so much, followed him from one hospital to another. So I went to an adult congenital specialist, and shortly thereafter they decided it was time. I knew this was going to happen, so I researched it. I knew I wanted a tissue valve. My local hospital didn't want to give me a tissue valve because of my age. So they were very adamant that I get a mechanical, and I was pretty adamant that I wanted a tissue. So I got a few more opinions, which led me 10 hours away to the Cleveland Clinic. Found a wonderful surgeon there and scheduled my surgery. The day before my surgery, they approached me about participating in a clinical trial. So they went through everything with me, and the surgeon said, I'm talking to you about this because I think this is going to be the best valve for you as far as my daily function. So after a couple hours of talking to my cardiologist, the research nurse, and the surgeon, I decided to go ahead with that clinical trial. It was very easy to process. They explained everything to me. Mm-hmm. I went for follow-ups. I believe the in-person follow-ups were 1, 3, 7, 9, and 10. Those post-op years, and the rest were on the phone. So they would just call me once a year and ask me, you know, my activity level and the medications I was on, any changes. And for the other years, I went in person, and they did the study echo and blood work and all the questions. So it was a very easy and very wonderful experience for me, because I participated in helping people, in the future. So it felt good for me to be able to do that. I was able to make that I kept that valve for 10 years and 13 days. So, and it was a 10-year study. So I was able to finish out the study. And at that point, the valve calcified and I needed a new valve. So at that time I went for my third open heart, second replacement. And I got another tissue valve. And at that time they prepped me for the TAVR for next time. Unfortunately, the patches that they put in it didn't hold up well. So last year I had an emergency surgery to remove and replace all of the patches. And here I am now.
Bless your heart.
Yeah, that's a good part of the story.
Yes.
I think, one of the items that strikes me with the three of you lovely ladies is just your courageousness. And some people think that, being part of a clinical trial is just, no big deal. But because of participation in people like yourself, this is why things get approved. So, Ms. Smith, you were talking about, your mom and this problem, and now because of you and maybe even her history as well, this procedure is an option for, much younger, much healthier patients. And I think that says a lot about being a part of a clinical trial, and certainly for you, Dr. Cantor, being, an early patient to have balloon angioplasty, certainly from working at the birthplace of angioplasty, it's really, and when somebody approaches you and says, okay, I know this is the gold standard treatment, but I have this idea for you. And I mean, just so impressive. And for you, Ms. Warchalik, I mean, to having done your research to know this is what I know about myself, and does this fit with what I want my life to be and where I see myself, I really, see that as just such a benefit to move forward as well, to be able, because now when we have these conversations, especially with a lot of our younger patients, to say, okay, what is it, it's this whole thing of shared decision making. And clinical trials are certainly a part of that. And so what I want to ask you ladies is, how did you feel the consenting process? I know a number of patients, sometimes can feel overwhelmed because, we go through, 25 pages of documents to be able to say, this, and then I don't know, and then yes, and then no, and then I don't know. I mean, did you feel prepared for what you were about to get involved in?
Definitely. I think at Morristown particularly, when I went to Emory in 1984, I had no idea what I was getting in for. I just knew it was better than the alternative. But this time I knew exactly. And you're right, the consent form is onerous. It's long, it's tedious, but every step is explained. You know what you're getting yourself in for. And nobody's got a gun to your head. If you read through that and say, no, I don't want to do this, they say, thank you very much, go ahead. So it really is up to the individual patient to decide whether he or she is going to proceed.
Well, for me, I have two wonderful sisters, and we're right behind one another in age. I'm the eldest, and my baby sister, who has turned out somehow or another to be the eldest in the family, she would not allow me to read a lot of stuff. She did all of the reading because the more you read, then I get more anxious about it, and I'm asking questions and, oh, wait a minute. And the thing I concentrate on, instead of reading what is the good side, I'll concentrate on what bad could happen, what could run around. So she took all of that from me. The consent form, she said to me, it's fine, it's a lot, but it's okay. But I did read that because I had to put my signature to it. Right. So I did not go in as nervous or as anxious as some people would, because I trusted my doctors. I truly believed. And like Deb Joyce said, I really was interested that would this help other people? And what could I do to play a role? But what stayed on my mind the whole time going through all the tests and all of this was that my mom gave me the strength. I was doing this because I knew this was something that would have helped my mom 100%. I believe it with all my heart. And therefore I'm doing it for her. And so that's what gave me the strength to go ahead.
Such a powerful story. What about for you, Deb?
Yeah, the process was really easy. I had probably the best research nurse in the world. And she...
I'll argue that because I did.
I don't know. She was with me every step of the way. Any question I had, she was right there with me reading it. And she was amazing. So I'm thankful for, having her too. It's a lot of reading. It's a lot of different information, complicated information. But when you have somebody there that helps you get through it, it makes it so much easier. So
without a doubt.
Absolutely.
But, I look back, I mentioned to you all that my father had his first heart attack at 42. That was in 1947. And at that time, they kept him in the hospital for 6 weeks. He wasn't allowed to walk. He could sit at the edge of the bed and dangle his feet. When he got home, he was sent away on vacation for another 6 weeks, and he was terrified to walk. We had steps down in our living room, and he would hold the banister coming up because he was so frightened. When I look at what the treatment was in 1947 and what it is today, I know that it's people like all of us who changed the standard of care. I mean, we look back at what my father's care was, and you say, what?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's amazing, and it's a very regulated system. And, it's very funny because when I first got involved in clinical trials, there would be testing or things that had to be done, as a floor nurse that I would have to collect. And I said, well, that makes no sense, but it's not. It's determined by the FDA and the trial sponsors to look at that safety and to be able to have a very methodical system of the care being reproducible. And that's how we advance the science, so to speak. So, I think to the point that I believe it was you that made, Dr. Cantor, that was, the trial sponsors want the studies to succeed. They want to show that their devices are safety, they're safe. That is paramount, and efficacious. And so they go through a lot of, testing, a lot of process. And then afterwards, sometimes people get worried about, well, how many times am I going to have to come back? For you, Deb, you were talking about, 1, 3, 5, 7, 10, like exactly, or some of the TAVR trials are, 1, 6, 1 month, 6 months, 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, up until about 10 years. And so we see this because we want to know, we don't want to just know how things are today. We want to know how things are in 10 years and what are we able to predict as we kind of get that information. So, it's very funny when TAVR first started, to your point, Ms. Joy, they talked about, okay, well, this is only available for patients who can't undergo surgery. and it was randomized between TAVR and medical management. And then we had enough data that we could say, oh, you know, okay, we know that it's beneficial. If you qualify, you can have it. Then we compared it again in high risk patients, then intermediate risk patients, and then finally low risk patients. So when we first started TAVR, the length of stay was between 6 and 7 days. And those patients didn't get out of bed, you know, immediately. And so now we've gotten to the point where in this past year during COVID, we have people who've published on same day discharge. You know, the same thing for angioplasty. You know, a lot of patients can go home same day now. So we see this kind of, you know, really moving along in fields. And I think to the point of, you know, having surgical valves, what's really interesting as well, and I'd love to hear your take on this, Deb, is, you know, the advances because percutaneous therapies have also advanced surgical therapies and the care that we provide. And so now when you look at the length of stay for some open heart surgeries, they're even 4 to 5 days. And you have this conversation, and I believe it was something that you mentioned as well, that, you know, you start off and you have to have kind of like, what is this lifetime management going to look like for me? And so I think that, you know, really kind of ties in with the clinical trial that you were a part of. Can you just talk about like some of that went through your head, knowing that I might have to do something else in the future?
Yeah, that was probably the most difficult part of the tissue valve versus mechanical valve decision. But I had at that time in 2008, I had a 4-year-old son and a 13-year-old son. Very active. I was very active. I love my salads one day, but I'll go a couple days without eating, you know, and so I didn't want to be scared to go outside and play with my kids and get caught. I didn't want to be strapped into a very rigid, and at that time they were telling me, you know, no greens, which my favorite foods are all green because of the warfarin or Coumadin. So that played a bigger role than the need for another surgical intervention. And we did, you know, we had a plan in place with the doctors in Cleveland. So I was very fortunate to have that time to really think about it and go through what's more important to me. And my everyday life and living life, being able to live life to the fullest was more important than having to be reopened again.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, one other item, again, we kind of touched on a little bit about being part of a clinical trial is just kind of that follow-up. And, you know, did you ever feel like it was too invasive? You know, the questions that were asked, you know, we want to know everything about you. We want to know if you stubbed your toe. We want to know all of it. And so did you ever feel like being part of the clinical trial was too much?
Nope.
No.
Absolutely not.
Nope.
So what I'm hearing is no.
I would say
Patricia, those follow-up questions and all of the questions, even before the procedure. And I have to say, like Dorothy and Deb said, my God, that nurse, oh, she was just, to me, the best in the goddamn world. All of them. It gave you added confidence. It felt grounded, and it felt, I tell you what, it didn't feel like you were a guinea pig just left in a cage, so to speak, and maybe looked at every now and then. You knew they cared about you. You knew they were sincere in what they were doing, and they wanted to know every little thing. That gave me all the confidence in the world.
Agree.
Absolutely.
And you develop, as I say, you develop a really nice relationship
with
the nurse. I mean, my favorite story, and I think Kathy's on, but she won't mind me telling this. I was doing my 6-minute walk, you know, between 2 chairs in the corridor of the hospital. And she was standing there with her stopwatch and with another nurse in case I collapsed or something. And about the 5th time past her, I said, you know, this is really boring. And she looked at me and she said, well, do you think it's interesting to watch you? And I cracked up. Well, apparently somebody walked by, another staff person walked by and said to her, you talk to a patient like that? And she said, well, maybe not any patient, but I can talk that way to Dorothy. And that to me explains what kind of relationship we developed. We can have fun together doing this silly stuff.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
I think that's important for other people to know, because the few people that I talk around in my, so that's the thing. That's one of the things that they are nervous about is, will they be taken care of? You know, is somebody there going to answer all my questions, you know?
And then some. They answer all your questions and the ones you didn't think of.
Exactly.
Right?
That's right. That's right.
Absolutely. So we do have a couple of questions that I'd love to run through. And of course, as any of our attendees here, if you have any questions, please feel free to go ahead and put that in the chat section. So the first point, it's more of a comment for you all, and it's such a wonderful series to have 3 brave women telling their stories and all wearing a smile. Bravo. So I have to 100% agree with that. Okay, our second question is, if your doctors hadn't brought up the clinical trial option to you, would you proactively on your own have sought out trials? And would you know where to look?
At that time, no. I didn't know much about clinical trials. Now, absolutely. But at that time, I would not have. I didn't know. I'm not even sure if I really understood what a clinical trial was at that point.
But, yeah.
Never mind where to look.
And I think as a lay person, you have no idea what's out there.
Right.
So you don't even know what to ask for. I mean, certainly, once you've been through it, you say to your doctor, well, is there anything else we could do instead? Right. But you have to have been there first. And so, you know, I've been very fortunate that my cardiologists over the years were keeping abreast of the literature. And I think if there's any suggestion I have for people who are on this, listening to this, make sure you have a doctor who isn't just doing same old, same old, same old, and know what's going on in the community of cardiology.
No.
I agree. If it had not, Dr. Cantor, the same thing happened to me. I had a doctor who had been at Northwestern. They said he opened it. All right. And he was pretty adamant, not adamant, but so, well, I guess the word is adamant, because he was so sure that I would be a perfect candidate. He was just, but he was up to date on that. Like everyone else, I never heard of it. I had in my mind what Dorothy's father went through. That is exactly what I had in my mind. And that's exactly what I was upset about, because I didn't want to spend all that time out, all of that, you know, but so true. Your doctors should be up to date so they can offer those alternatives.
Yep.
There is a great website. It's clinicaltrials.gov. And if you put in a condition, it can pull up some clinical trials. That's just an aside, but 100% agree with you all that, you know, a lot of it is dependent on providers and them being aware of the literature and, you know, being able to direct you all in the right area. Okay, so our next question is what online or other resources did you consult for your personal research to decide on trial participation?
I didn't. To be honest, I so trusted my doctor, both at the time of the angioplasty and now for the clip, that I just trusted. I don't know. What did you do, Deb? Did you check?
At that time, no, I didn't. Now I would, but at that time I did not.
I know I didn't. Now, the person who was checking out and all was my baby sister. And that's her mindset, you know. The new older sister, my baby sister, was the one who was checking out everything. And she knew exactly what I should know and what I shouldn't know. All right. Mm-hmm. But I didn't even think about it. I'm with Dorothy. I completely trusted my doctor.
Mm-hmm. Mine happened pretty quickly. It was the day before my surgery that I was approached. So if it were further away, maybe I would have. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So our next question is, would you have benefited from speaking to another trial patient before your procedure and participation? What else would have helped you make your decision or improve your experience?
Now, that's something I did want to know. Who else had this and could tell me something about it? And you can't get that information from the hospital. HIPAA. And I didn't know. What did you say, Dorothy?
It's HIPAA compliance. They can't tell you.
They can't tell you. So I had no one in my little world that knew anything about it. And so that would have helped me. I would have loved to talk to someone that had gone through it.
I agree.
Mm-hmm. I took it upon myself when I heard about anybody, in my circle or the larger circle of people. I always and still do offer up my assistance. If you want to talk to somebody who had angioplasty, if you want to talk to somebody who had a mitral valve clip. And when I discovered Mended Hearts, it was like, how come they didn't talk to me? I've been a heart patient since 1984. Mm-hmm. And I just learned about it through doing a program like this for Edwards. Mm-hmm. And Mended Hearts was represented. So I think more people who are about to be clinical trial patients or even post-clinical trial who are having whatever procedures are already approved would so benefit from the word being out about Mended Hearts and people like us willing to talk.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And also, even sharing with your providers, with the doctors and nurse practitioners and PAs and healthcare teams who help provide that care, to let them know, what Mended Hearts was able to do for you. That helps us because, once I learned about Mended Hearts, believe me, I tell all my patients, here's a great resource for you. And so again, I think reaching out, I do believe 100% that is, beneficial. And some of the industry partnerships are important as well. But looking for that advocacy and seeking out opportunities that you may or may not have had as well. Okay, so next question is, this is a great question. What advice do you have for the clinical community and industry to help raise awareness about trials so more people can consider this option? So if I granted you a magic wand and said, here, how can we be better partners? How can we help get the word out so more people like yourselves have opportunities?
Well, everybody, Patricia, one of the things I feel is that I would either go to medical schools with new young doctors coming out of school, especially those who are studying the heart and all, that they are aware and that they will be informing their patients that this procedure exists. That's the first thing I would do. The second thing I would do is neighborhood, urgent cares, neighborhood, the community, because that's where this information needs to go into the community, to the just ordinary people who don't do a lot of studying, don't do a lot of looking, don't really take care of themselves for whatever reason. They should know about this. And I would really work a lot with doctors, because I feel that doctors are the first line of getting this information out to their patients. Mm-hmm. There should be some seminars, something set up in maybe some of the major heart hospitals or the hospitals period, that people could come and get literature and talk about it, and people like, you know, Deb and Dorothy maybe could be there and tell them. That word has to be spread out. It ought to be on Dr. Phil, what's that man named, Dr. Oz show, to talking about it. You know, I've thought about writing him and telling him to put it on his show.
Why not?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think partnerships really need to be formed with the medical community, the doctors' offices, because people really trust their doctors. If,
Yes.
like I was saying in another presentation, if I see something on social media or online, you know, an ad, I'll usually just bypass it because you know, who knows if that's legitimate or not, but people really trust you know, their doctors and the hospitals. So to just provide, like Joy said, educational sessions, I think that would be great, just so people are aware it's out there.
Mm-hmm.
I think if I had the magic wand, I would tell NIH or the CDC to start doing public service announcements.
That's
a great idea.
That's a great idea.
About the availability of clinical trials, not only for coronary artery disease, but for everything. There are clinical trials for cancer patients, for diabetes patients, you name the condition. There are clinical trials going on. And I think if we had a more educated populace that understood that there are some new treatments they might ask about, they would start to pressure their docs, who would then have to know.
Yeah, no, it's a really great point. So the next question is what was your biggest learning or surprise about trial participation?
I was actually surprised that they were willing to, you know, reimburse me for travel, that it was, you know, that important to them, that they would do that.
I'll add that they gave me $5 to use in the Starbucks.
My favorite coffee.
That's right. You got a clip and some coffee. You can't beat that.
That's right. No, I don't know. Were you all surprised other than the reimbursement?
Well, I was most not a surprise, but pleasantly surprised is on the thoroughness and the what was the word? Consistency in handling, asking questions, calling. Very, very thorough. That really, really surprised me. Something that I thought, oh, you don't need to know that. That's insignificant. But it was significant when you look at the big picture of the thing. And they were very, very pleasant about asking questions and handling you. I was just absolutely blown away with the kindness and the sincereness and the dedication of these folks.
You remind me that when I was dismissed from Emory Hospital, the late Dr. Grunzig kissed my hand. See, doctor I have ever experienced that kind of real, okay. He was, of course, he was European, and it was part of his.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit of a different time. We don't kiss too much now, but
no. It was very surprising, I will tell you that.
Yeah. My doctor, he's no longer with, you know, he's retired because of COVID and stuff. But I loved him because it made me think about my father would do this. He pat me on my back and said to me, good girl, good girl.
They can't do that anymore either. They can't call you good girl anymore, you know.
Good girl. I loved it. I loved that he said that. I knew he was just so caring about it, and good for him because he had recommended something for his patient and it came out successful, you know.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think, you know, we've talked a lot about the benefits and the good parts about being in a clinical trial, but do you think there are any main barriers for people to participate, you know, financial, insurance wise, travel wise, awareness, access, fear? I mean, there's a lot of fear because, you know, we don't know what the overall outcome is going to be.
Yeah, I definitely think fear plays a factor in many people's decision to not participate. And I think with education, you can overcome that.
I think that's why Mended Hearts is so important, because you help people overcome fear when they see you and say, oh, she's okay.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, they have no role models to look to and say, what happens when you go through this?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the travel as well.
Yeah.
I'm lucky enough to be able to take a few days off and travel to be able to participate in the clinical.
Right. I think of the three of us, you're the only one who had to travel far away.
Yeah.
And that is an added burden.
No, absolutely. You know, and one thing that Joy had mentioned before was, you know, talking about COVID, and your doctor actually retired during COVID, but you know, one of our attendees said they pointed out that they think COVID helped people understand trials better. Do you agree with that?
I do. I definitely agree, because we're in one big trial right now with the immunization. So
yeah,
exactly. They know that thousands upon thousands of people were willing to get vaccinated to see if it worked. And so it's probably, as you said, the most public clinical trial, other than the polio vaccine in the 50s.
In the 50s, right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think so. I think that you may not hear a lot of it, but one thing I feel COVID did was bring people, they think it didn't, but in one way, particularly what you just said, Dorothy, about the clinical trial and what people were willing to do. I had so many people around that took the shot and wanted to help. It's a love of humanity. I think it showed how people really do care about one another, and people really do want people to be safe and healthy, because with COVID, that really was a brave thing to do, because it was so much unknown, much unknown, right?
Yep, absolutely. So we have 2 minutes, and in our final 2 minutes here, before I turn it back over to Andrea, I just want to say thank you. You have certainly filled my tank today for making me feel good about our field, what we do, and being able to be a part of this community. You are absolutely inspiring women and inspiring human beings in general, and I cannot thank you enough for your courageousness, because now I get to have conversations with patients, offering them therapies that weren't even created even just 10 years ago. And so I am eternally grateful for your willingness to be a part of clinical trials.
Thank you. And thank you for everything you do.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you.
Nice meeting you, Dorothy and Deb.
That's just what I was going to say. We never would have known each other otherwise. So thank you, Mended Hearts, for letting us interact and know each other.
Well, thank you all so much. I really, Patricia, you were so right when you said fill your tank. This has been a fantastic hour of listening and learning together, and I am so appreciative for you all spending your time with us and sharing your experience and what inspirations all of you are. So thank you so much for sharing with us. And for everybody listening, we will have our recording up in a couple of days. So thank you so much, and everybody have a great day.
You're welcome. God bless
you.
everybody.
Stay well, everybody.
Bye-bye.